We have a surprise for you tonight. A couple of weeks ago, we had Chris Grant, who may also call in tonight. Well, we've got Jeff, Bob's other son, on the line, and we're going to see what he's got to say, and we'll talk some good old-fashioned talk radio when talk radio was talk radio. So we're going to say hello to Jeff right now, and I'm sure our friend Bob from Iowa is listening as well, so he really wants to hear this because he's a big radio aficionado. So we're going to bring up Jeff right now. Hey, Jeff, thanks for joining us. Really great to hear from you.
Well, thanks very much for having me, John and Frank. I've heard a little bit about your program, your podcast from my brother, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be on with you and talk about all things Bob Grant, if I can lend any special light on that, but things that he would also be interested as well. So I'm happy to be here, gentlemen.
Well, welcome to The Right Perspective, and let's be heard!
Yeah, because, Frank was Bob's favorite caller. When
he was.
Yeah. So, we got tired of talk radio and the way it changed from when your father was doing the show, because everything just became commercialized and the caller became secondary. And they were really just pushed off to the side. All you kept hearing was, you got 10 seconds, you got 30 seconds. There was no back and forth or anything. I guess because they want so many advertisements to make money. So everything became just money crazy, and the show wasn't as much fun as it used to be. So
I remember listening to your father. Somebody told me about him in the early 70s, and that's when talk radio was, to me, the golden age of talk radio, because it was humorous, and of course there were serious topics, but it was funny. It was really enjoyable. Remember, your father used to use. Is that me, John?
No, I don't know what's going on there, Frank. Just, I guess the radio gremlins are at it again. They're going after conservatives from all angles. So who knows?
It was really funny.
I think a couple of things have happened. One of which, and you rightly point out the development of the influence of advertising and how that's led programs to, sound different. And then also, there's been a cultural shift too. When my dad first began in radio, we certainly had the rivalries between the left and the right, if you want to refer to it as Republicans and Democrats. But I think certainly, and you gentlemen, I sure would agree, is that, we have this divide and this, this level of vitriol between conservatives and the far left, and it's, reached a pitch that it never was before. And you have hosts now that feel perhaps more convicted than ever to promote their brand of conservatism or their ideologies. And I think this is what you're referring to, is what we would call maybe the longer lasting monologue. As you recall, my dad did his monologues, and the first 5 to 10 minutes were devoted to that. But after that, unless he was having a guest, and I can tell you this because he spoke to me about it on a number of occasions, his goal was to put on as many callers as possible. And if he had a whole bunch one day, he'd try to feed them in and out as quickly as possible. He believed in his, in his heart and his head that, and he really did, that the callers were the star of the show. Without the callers, there wouldn't be a Bob Grant. He'd just be on and he'd be giving his opinions, but everybody's got an opinion, and the whole thing is he wanted to hear from people. He believed that's what made the show, and he believed that that's what made it popular, and that's what he took with him when he started, and right up until he was no longer with us, still doing his program.
Oh, yeah. Well, what was great about your dad's show was that he didn't go from one topic to the next. It was all open phones, and you could talk about any topic. So,
well, what I think really, in my opinion, killed talk radio was when Rush Limbaugh came on and it became syndicated. Because when your father was on, when I heard him on MCA, there was a plethora of hosts. So you had a lot of opinions. But when Limbaugh came on, he was carried on so many stations. I mean, he was a phenomenon. And that changed talk radio. And it was toned down. And I don't think, there's no way that you could ever have a host say with what your father used to say. No way. It was completely changed.
Yeah, it is definitely there are a lot of things that are different about the world today than the world that he was in. But that was another hallmark of Bob Grant, was that he did say whatever was on his mind. And I think he had two things in mind when he did that. One was, I'm just going to say what I feel. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be transparent. That's the way to engage people. That's the way you get people to engage with you. There's no reason to hide what you think or what you feel, as long as you don't, truly offend people. And I don't think his goal was ever to go out and just, by itself offend somebody. He would say things that people would find offensive, but I think there's a bit of a fine line. He would say things that he just felt were, in his heart and in his head.
Yeah, well,
the other thing was that he wanted people also to feel like they could be comfortable with him. And so many people that and probably Frank, you have said this, I'm sure on occasion, more than occasion, is that, doggone it, he says what I'm thinking. He says what I'm feeling. And you would hear from people who would say, oh, it felt so good to hear him say that. That's exactly what I'm thinking.
Right.
And it, even today, that I think is how we react when someone says something from their heart that also aligns with what we're thinking and feeling.
Well, Chris, it's funny. So by the way, we have your brother. I'm going to bring him up right now. We've got Chris Grant and Jeff Grant on the line, folks. Boy, we got a great lineup tonight. So you're hooked up, and he's going to partake as well. And hey, you with us, Chris?
Good evening.
Hey, there he is. Yeah. So you hear these liberals say, you had to get your marching orders from Rush Limbaugh. You had to get your marching orders from Bob Grant. You can't think for yourself. You had your way. No, it was just the opposite. We already had those feelings within us, and we found people who were saying what we already thought. They, a lot of hosts actually felt, they followed us the way we felt, and that's why they became popular, because they were expressing what we were already feeling for years, and we had no outlet until your father came along, until, Rush came along, and a couple of others. So it's just the opposite. We were anything but just mindless robots like the left tries to make us out to be,
No, so true. Absolutely so true. And the thing is, one-on-one, and I know my brother would concur with this, is my dad would run circles around these mindless left-wingers because they have no substance.
No.
They have no substance. None.
No. You find that even today when you're on social media. You'll put something up that's factually based, and all they'll respond is, "Oh, you're just a cult member. You're just an a-hole. Or some other." They don't respond to the substance of what you wrote. They never have a response because they can't beat you in a debate. All they can do is try and belittle you, and they're all the same. It's amazing.
And I know Jeff would remember this. Our dad really, he had admiration for Mayor Ed Koch. Everyone remembers him.
Oh, he did.
And the reason was because Ed Koch was, I guess now, Jeff, you can jump in any time. he was objective and more of a moderate, and did not, elect to use all this name calling when they were getting vested in an argument.
Well, yeah, that was one of the things. So many wonderful things I think that we can explore with respect to how my dad, what motivated him and why he said and did the things he did was he was not one to say, okay, you're a conservative, so therefore I'm on your side. In fact, he had some very close friends, and he's not the only conservative that can say this. I mean, if you recall the pretty well-documented friendship of the late Justice Antonin Scalia, who my dad loved, was a friend with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and politically those two probably couldn't be more opposite. Well, my dad had some of those same types of friendships, people that he knew that were complete opposites politically and ideologically, but they could have their conversations because each of them recognized that they were not robots, that they were thinking for themselves. And it was a discussion which, I think the framers of the Constitution probably even meant for us as a country to have this opposite, this two-party system where we could be a checks and balances. Of course, it's nothing like that today. But that's what was the driving, I think, motivation behind, how my dad thought and approached things was, you are who you are and you think for yourself, and whether you're a conservative or not, I just want you to be honest and, share what is in your heart and what's really on your mind. And as you recall, he would say, what's on your mind? And Chris can probably remember a lot of times when, I'm just thinking, Chris, of callers that called in, and if my dad could sniff out a phony in an instant, and he would say, all right, what's on your mind, pal?
Yeah. Yeah.
and he, he did not like to he didn't like to have one of those types of people on the other end of his phone, and he would try to sniff them out and call them out. And I think also that made his programs very entertaining as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Frank and I have all our phone calls that we made to Bob over the years on a CD and everything, on the Best of John and Frank, and we kept all of Bob's phone calls separate. And
that's a very entertaining program.
Yeah, we've got a lot of stuff, but it was just like Bob used to pay Frank a lot of compliments when he would call. In fact, we use them during the course of our program. So, like, we use it for a liner like this.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Frank, who is perhaps the most unique caller ever to phone the Bob Grant program in the many, many years that I've been doing this broadcast, whose perorations on world events, local events, whatever the case may be, are absolutely brilliant.
Yes, you're absolutely right, and I love that man, Frank, that gives the speech. He's a brilliant man.
He certainly is.
Yes, thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Laura.
So we use them, in our breaks. So, and there's a lot of other funny stuff that we have. So, but Bob was always very complimentary to Frank, and of course Frank liked Bob because Bob let you speak. It's
one thing your father said that came true. He said that you will not recognize the United States of America by the year 2000.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what has happened here. We cannot recognize the United States and what's being done by the neo-Bolsheviks. And they've gotten away with it because, and it was mirrored in talk radio, because what was said on MCA could never be said today. And that is a fact.
No, that's for sure. Because some of the things that Bob said, I was going over some of the stuff that Bob said because we have a lot of Bob Grant files. And some of the ways that he spoke to some of these callers was a riot. And you couldn't get away with that. one guy called up. I think this is the phone. This is the call. The guy calls them, and Bob asks, "Where are you from, pal?"
Hello, Bob. Yes. You baboon.
Oh no, that's it. Let me see. I got to hear. Let me just see if this is the.
Hello. Yeah, Bob. I got a problem with the New York City. I'm gonna kill you, Bob. WOR. Hello.
The guy just yells, "I'm going to kill you, Bob." And, I used to record these phone calls on a radio, and I'd have a mic next to the radio, the speaker, and you could hear me laugh in the background when he would say funny things, and it made it even funnier. Now, this may be the phone call where he asked the guy, "Where are you from, pal?" And the guy says, "Barbados." He says, "Well, I don't talk to Barbadians."
Well, I was going to say that. I agree with you many times, but I find I must...
Let me see if this is the one.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, Bob Grant.
Yes, sir.
I want to speak about the Berkowitz case.
Yes.
Oh, that's not
why
it.
are you listening to your radio, sir?
Oh, I've lowered it down as low as possible.
Well, you were supposed to shut it off, and besides, you've been drinking. You're on WOR. Hello?
Well, of course, you're doing
Where are you from?
Here it is.
Where are you from? No, where are you from? What country are you from?
Barbados.
I beg your pardon?
Barbados.
I see. Well, I don't talk to Barbadians. You're on WOR. Hello?
Hi there, Mr. Frank. My son would like to say something to you.
You're on WOR. I'm not putting up with phony accents, or real accents for that matter, too. You're on WOR. Hello? Yeah, it's Friday. It's Friday. You're on WOR.
So, I mean, that was when, radio was fun. You get a laugh out of it. So, and Bob was the best at it, So he could just say something very casual and it would be funny. So, but
yeah, he had. Chris and I have had these conversations numerous times. His talents were many. He could be funny. He could be wry. He could have a kind of a dry wit. He would mix that in with conversational, styles. That was just one of many talents that he had. He certainly did. And I think that's good because you've got to have that in a radio program. If you were serious from top to bottom, I don't know if it would be a very entertaining program.
No, it's got to be entertaining.
The other thing I think is it also made it real to people. I think my dad really wanted to speak to all socioeconomic strata, but I think he had a special place in his heart. I know he had a special place in his heart for the man or the woman who was out there putting in a hard 8 hours, working, earning a paycheck, bringing it home, working for their family, maybe what we'd call family values. And he loved to try to give those types of people a voice on the air. Yeah. No, a lot of people thought that he was hard, but he really had a soft heart. So, and we met Bob a couple of times. He used to go to the Rio Diner in New Jersey, and we went over a couple of times to visit him. We sat with him and had breakfast. And he was very nice. So, and that's I'm curious. Did you find him to be? Because I've heard a number of people say that, he's not altogether what you'd expect when you meet him off the air. Very, friendly and engaging. I mean, there are certain aspects of he still has that sense of humor, but a person who you feel like you could talk to and have a conversation with one-to-one in a setting like the Rio Diner. Yeah, Frank and I did anyway. We sat at the table with him, and he had the lovely, his girlfriend, I think she just died recently. What was her name? I forgot. Josephine. And and she was there with us as well, and they were very friendly, and he wasn't standoffish or anything like that. So he was very, very kind and very down to earth with us. So he
he had that thing where he also wanted to stand out a little bit because, all people who are very famous, they have their egos. And, I guess Bob had somewhat of an ego, but we didn't see it there. But he never came off that way to us when we met him.
Well,
I remember
he
when
sometimes would describe himself as an egomaniac with an inferiority complex.
Yeah.
No,
I remember when he was on MCA, which I considered a golden age of talk radio, and he was on vacation. I think it was for a week, and Malachi McCourt took over the show. So Malachi McCourt, who came, played the part of the leftist. He was the antithetical to Bob Grant. And Malachi McCourt goes, "You could wipe your ass with the American flag." So Bob comes back, and he goes, "That scum will never sit in my seat again."
Yeah. Yeah, Malachi.
And he would say something like that for two reasons, I think. Reason number one would be the entertainment value, and the sense that anybody who loves America would identify with it. But the other thing was, and I'm sure Frank and John, you would agree with this wholeheartedly, he had a deep love for this country. My grandfather, Pat Gigante, his dad once said, and my dad told me this story about them. My grandfather had come from Italy, as you know. I'm sure my dad told the story on the air more than once, and he came through Ellis Island, and he once talked to my dad and about America and the country, and I think they were talking about why here, and what my grandfather said to my dad was, because this country is the greatest hope for the future of mankind. Yeah. Now, I know when you hear a statement like that, Frank and John, it probably almost breaks your heart to think of conditions in America 2023. But that is what my dad was. He was taught that. He grew up with that, and he carried that with him in his heart until he was no longer with us. He loved America, and he loved the country deeply.
Yeah, he certainly did. At one time, he was very close to Mario Cuomo, and then he had a falling out with him. I forgot why he became disenchanted with Mario Cuomo, but he used to have that famous saying, "Mario, zendame duze brovino spashim," and I have a T-shirt with that saying on it with the picture of Bob Grant. And it might be worth money. I don't know. It's got to be 20 years old, 25 years old. It's got Mario, zendame duze brovino spashim. So, but Mario, I don't know. He had a falling out with Bob for some reason. I forget why.
They were having dinner, and Bob said something. I forget what he said to Cuomo, but Cuomo said, "That's pretty low, even for you, Bob." And that was it. Bob thought, oh, I know the governor. No, Mario Cuomo was a snake, and his sons are even lower than him. And that's what the falling out was about.
Okay. I'm glad you remembered, Frank, because somebody was asking, why did he have a falling out with Mario Cuomo? And I had forgotten, so.
Well, if I could add to that, I don't know how we got on the subject of Mario Cuomo, but I remember my dad mentioning to me that he called out Cuomo's war chest. He goes, "Mario, what are you going to do with all that money? What? Come on. And Cuomo didn't like it because my dad put the spotlight on him.
Oh.
And that was the end of that relationship. And it's because he said, you got all this money. You're ramping up for another reelection. What are you doing? And obviously that's where the chasm, the inception of the chasm between my dad and Cuomo.
Yeah. Well, That'll do it. Well, look, it's no loss. You know what? Because Mario Cuomo was a rat anyway. So, Bob had.
Well, his son got run out by his own party.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, getting back to what my brother said earlier, there were countless times when we'd say, "Hey, Dad, what about this guy? What about that guy? He's, two-faced. Oh, he's full of duplicity." My dad had no tolerance for someone that was all about himself. He had an agenda. I don't care, right, left, even Republicans. There's some guys that goes, "Yeah, this guy was a fraud." Yeah, I know he called himself a Republican, but I just had no tolerance for him.
No, he didn't like fake, phonies, frauds. So,
and what's the guy's name? The governor, Florio.
Yeah,
Flim Flam Florio man.
Oh, right, yeah, Flim Flam Florio. That's right.
Yeah, remember that?
Oh, yeah. How can you forget?
Fake, phony, fraud.
That is vintage Bob Grant.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
Bob was one of a kind, really.
Can you believe this guy?
Well, and that's what, as we were talking about earlier, that's what drove his the way he approached his show. He is, and I'd be curious, for Chris's thoughts on this, but his monologue was there not to promote his Bob Grant agenda, but basically to call out what he saw going wrong in America or New York City or wherever he was talking about, and how to fix it. I think that's one of the reasons his monologues usually never lasted more than, say, 7 or 8 minutes tops. And Frank and John, as you rightly pointed out, you can listen today to, just about any one of your talk radio's conservative talk radio programs, and you'll hear, I'm not even sure if you can call it a monologue. It's just an ongoing statement that lasts maybe an hour or so, something like that.
Yeah. Well, we have all kinds of sound bites with Bob because he was a big part of our lives too for a while there, and everybody's lives here in the tri-state area. It was when he went national that I think the only mistake I think Bob ever made was going national. He should have never done that because he had to change a little bit because, in the tri-state area here, people are a little tougher and everything, but so he had to appeal to a larger audience when he went national. So he softened up a little bit, and everybody used to tell him when they'd call him up, "Bob, you don't sound the same," or whatever, and he used to try and deny it, but you couldn't deny it. Because we heard it. Everybody was a Bob Grant fan, so they knew what he was like.
Well, did he have a falling out with R. Peter Strauss? Because I remember he was on MCA, then he went, it was like an odyssey because he was on MCA, then he went to WOR, and it was on 11 o'clock at night. He hated the hours. Do you know that it's believed that he actually got a call from David Berkowitz, and because it's in what's the name, Terry's book on Berkowitz, and it's believed that Berkowitz had called his show, and that's when he was on 11 o'clock p.m. on WOR. And then from WOR, he went to, I think he was in Philadelphia for a year on an FM station because a classmate of mine in college was going to law school there. And then from there, he came back to MCA and he went to ABC, where the show was on when the Yankees weren't playing. And one night, he was waiting till it was like almost 12 o'clock. And, the Yankee games, I don't know, I guess it's the same in the rest of the country. They do the post-game show, the post-game wrap-up show. And so he gets on, and he goes, to hear and to be heard, your influence counts, use it. It was like the opening and closing in 1 minute. And then what happened was he was on those hours because Howard Stern was on the afternoon, and then they kicked Stern off, and then he got the afternoon show on ABC. So I remember he had been in a few stations. He came back to MCA for a while. He was on at 6 a.m. with some woman. You know, he really hated it till finally they put him on in the afternoon. But Strauss had told him, you can't do it the way you used to, because he used to do a commercial for Sweet and Low, and the owner of Sweet and Low was involved in some anti-crime initiative. And, you know, Bob would finish and say, we're fighting for our lives. And then Strauss told him, tone it down. So at the end of it, Bob goes, we're fighting for our lives. And then, you know, he went on to bigger and better things than MCA.
Yeah, he did have that falling out with the Strausses, and I think that was based largely on they didn't want him to sanitize, so to speak, you know, his product, and you know he wanted to be who he was, and felt like he couldn't do that. And you know, he used to tell me sometimes, you know, look, if I can't be who I am, then what's the point of this?
Right. Yeah. Well, he always wanted to be who he was, that's for sure. Yeah, he was really unhappy at WMCA. And then I think he went to WOR, right, Frank?
Yeah, he went to WOR. He was on 11 at night till 2 in the morning. I remember he said those god-awful hours.
Yeah,
I mean, that was, I don't know why, you know, they put him on it. And then he went back a couple of years later. He went back to WOR. You know, radio is a very tenuous business, you know, when you get into it. I know Strauss used to sign people to 13-week contracts, and then when he wanted to get rid of them, he'd move them to the weekends. There was one guy who was very big at one time, Herb Norman, and he put this guy on to force him to quit. Herb Norman was on from 5:45 to 6 a.m. So the guy had to get up, come down there for 15 minutes. You know, it wasn't good.
No. And there was time, like we used to call Bob, and when he had a show in the afternoon, and they used to repeat Bob's programs overnight at one point for about a year. So, and I think they used to do it a couple of times, but sometimes our calls, my call and Frank's call to Bob, would be on 3 times in one day.
Wow.
And I noticed that sometimes they would edit it out because they didn't want too many regular callers to be heard too often.
Well, that's right. I mean, they had this, I think it was called the 7-day rule, and I don't know if that's still in effect on any talk programs, but
yeah.
You weren't allowed to call in more frequent, you know, more or less, I guess, more frequently than 7 days apart.
Yeah.
And if his producers recognized your voice, they would say, you know, you can't, you know, it's the 7-day rule. And there were a couple of times where I visited his control room while he was on the air, and I would hear his producers occasionally catch somebody like that.
Yeah. So. Well,
but that was because, you know, some people wanted to talk to him all the time. Can you blame them?
No. That's, you know, that's the way it was back in those days. And you had
and then he didn't want people to call him up and say, "How are you, Bob?"
Oh,
right.
He hated that.
Yeah.
So they would call him, you know, so people, of course, would do it on purpose. So they go, "How are you, Bob?"
Yeah, right. Yeah, I remember him saying one time, "Who started this thank you for taking my call nonsense?"
Well, if it would make either of you or any of his other callers feel any better, and this is in no way at all a complaint, but he would do that with myself and well, I presume Chris as well. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but there were a couple of occasions where I would say, "Hey, Dad," you know, we would call and talk usually every other week at least. And there were some occasions where I would say, "You know, Dad, how are you?" And he would say, "That's not what you wanted to ask me." And it was because he wanted to have substantive conversations with his children. He wanted to get at the heart of how we were doing in life and we would have light conversation as well, but there were plenty of moments where he wanted to just pick our brains and see where our heads were really at and how we felt we were doing, because he always wanted us to do the best. And, that's a side of him that I don't know whether many people know about, because he was still a family man, even though he was a professional, and he remained a family man throughout his life, interacting with his children.
Yeah. He's, you could tell that his family meant a lot to him on the air, because he would always mention you and Jeff and everything like that. For a while there, didn't you work at the studio, or weren't you doing something at the studio, or doing voiceovers or something?
No, in my sophomore year, I was going to Long Island City High School, in Queens. And matter of fact, Jeff, you'll recall you took me to the airport in Phoenix. I was not getting along with my mom, and Jeff was the back channel to my dad, and my dad reached out and says, well, why don't you come live with me for a while, son? And so I did. And what I would do is take, the 1 to the double R, go to high school, come back. But I would stop because it was like, that time it was WMCA, was like 3 or 4 stops from where we lived on 66th and Lincoln Square there in Manhattan. And then I spent my afternoons with my homework, doing it in my dad's office. And then my dad and I would either walk home or we'd take the subway home. It was like, say, 3 stops. So a lot of times I just, I just kind of pulled into like, what does my dad actually do, And like Jeff was, alliterating to, I would just, listen to take him to calls. I found it to be entertaining. I'd say, wow, Dad, you really, you waxed eloquently, or, you took that guy and threw him over the bus as soon as possible. And, I just found it very entertaining. I found it funny. It was educational. I had no idea, because, New York and Phoenix, Arizona were like 2 worlds apart.
Yeah.
And so I didn't do voiceovers, but every now and then I'd wave and then say, hey, do you want to add in a little bit? And I'd kind of get in there, and I forget what the questions were about, but I joined in with my dad occasionally.
Yeah, well, I have to ask you something now. Did Bob feel resentful of other hosts at times? Did he have any jealousy of hosts, or feel that they weren't up to snuff, or would he complain about other hosts?
You know what? I don't recall. Remember, that was in 1977, 78. I do not recall. No one comes to mind. Jeff, does anybody come to mind?
Well, I think he had referred to the great Barry Farber as that gas bag or something like that.
Yeah, he might have, but I don't remember. Maybe Jeff picked up on it. I don't.
Well, Barry Farber actually held him in very high admiration.
Oh, yeah.
I met Barry a couple of times when I was in New York, and he certainly admired Dad. Nobody comes to mind. I'm going to be honest, though. I think that he probably, I would say, not a jealousy, but I think just knowing what I know about my dad, I think he probably lamented when maybe another host would be recognized who my dad didn't feel was actually worthy of that recognition. So I wouldn't say he was jealous of success, but I think, if he felt like maybe another figure was being over-recognized, or was, not, his body of work wasn't representative of the way he was being portrayed through an award or through some type of accolades. I think he would probably have felt that, some kind of maybe disgust or that's the best word that I can think of. But no, the only time that he ever brought up that I remember another radio host, and this is actually kind of a fun story. Chris, I don't know if you remember this or not, but there was a time when he went on vacation, and he was I forget what. He was filling in for somebody. He was filling in for someone who did a program on the West Coast, and I don't remember the name of the host, but the host had asked him, Bob, can you fill in for me? It's a 3-hour program, and I'm going to tell it the way my dad told it to us. Was my dad said, yeah, sure. And he was in New Jersey at the time. I think he was in central New Jersey, and he was on for the first hour, and the host, who was vacationing, actually called his station and said, okay, tell Bob not to say thus and so or do this. And so the producer relayed that to my dad. And in the second hour, as in the first, my dad took a lot of calls during the program. And the host called in between the second and third hour breaks and said, that's it, I don't want him to do any more of the program. So the producer said, okay, Bob, you're done for the night. And my dad, the way my dad told it was, this guy was worried that my dad was somehow going to take over his program.
Ah, yeah. Hey.
I don't know I don't know if he ever told that story publicly or on the air, but I know that he told it to Chris and I maybe once or twice, and I know he told it to some of his friends. It was comical to hear him.
Well, that's how he got. That's how he got started in California. He sat in for a very famous host. Who's that host, Frank, that used to have the big show out there?
Oh, that was Joe Pine.
Joe Pine. He sat in,
yeah.
And they said, well, Frank. Here we go. Frank. Bob used to say Frank should have his own show many times. They said, look, Bob, you're a natural at this, and they gave him a show. So when he sat in for Joe Pine, so he got started like that.
He had started in Chicago. His very first foray into any kind of media was he was an aide for, I believe it was WBBM, and he had gone out and done some election coverage for him. And he wasn't on the air, but he was collecting some information for elections. And then eventually he got on the air at WBBM, and he went out to Southern California, and he went out there to work as a sports director for KLAC Radio, and he worked there, I'm going to say it was maybe 5 years or so, something like that. And then from there, I'm a little bit fuzzy on this because I was so young at the time, but from there he actually did television. A little-known factoid, he was on a program that was aired on the RKO General Station in Los Angeles, Channel 9, called Tempo. And quick bit of trivia, John and Frank, do you know who the host was who succeeded my dad after his, I believe it was a 1-year run as the host of this program? Tempo was a television program with newsmakers and some lighter topics occasionally.
Was it Gypsy Rose Lee?
No, it was. Maybe she was on at some point. I'm not sure, but eventually Regis Philbin did that show for a short period of time.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah, well.
Yeah, that's when we lived on Carabeth.
Yeah, well, Regis was good. He was a natural too. So, but there was so many that back then. I mean, you should see, because when Frank and I used to call, we made 135 cassette tapes of our phone calls from the mid-1970s all the way up to the early 2000s. I mean, it's a whole history of talk radio. Many of them,
wow.
We have them all on a DVD now because, we switched them over from a cassette tape, cleaned them up, and put them on a DVD, and we have them on 2 DVDs. Now, it's like 135 old tapes that are now on DVD and all kinds of calls, to talk radio with all the hosts over all the years. Lynn Samuels, Bill Mazer, Barry Farber, Barry Gray, Dick Oliver, all those guys. So, and all the other ones that came in between on WABC. It's a whole history of talk radio. Really, somebody should have them as an archive.
You know, I remember your father used to sit in on with Long John. He would be a guest on Long John's show from 12 at midnight till 5 in the morning. So I don't know how he was able, and then he had to come in and do the afternoon show. You know, Strauss had them do that. So he's doing his own show, and then once in a while he would have to sit in as a co-host with Long John Neville.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, you gentlemen are to be saluted. I mean, you're true fans and historians, and it's great that you're preserving these programs, and not just for the sake of memories, but to, you know, to pass them along. I mean, I think it's a good thing to have this out there so that, you know, maybe if conditions develop that allow talk radio to become in the future what it was in the past again. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but, you know, certainly to be able to have this fantastic archives, and then to be able to have somebody listen to it and say, you know, we need to get back to that. It's great that you have that.
Well, it's we have a couple of questions here from one of our listeners. George, the objectivist, asked all these questions. He asked the other one about Mario Cuomo, so he got mad at me when I said somebody was asking. But he had two questions. Why did Bob Grant take Jay Diamond under his wing? And also, what was Bob's relationship with Lynn Samuels and Curtis Sliwa?
Well, I mean, I can take the Lynn Samuels. I know that he and Lynn were. I would say they were friends off the air. I don't know that they were good friends, but she was one of these other hosts or figures that I would point to as somebody that he was friendly with, who had a completely opposite political viewpoint, and it was because they could talk to each other honestly. I mean, I think that was one of the criteria for, if you will, friendship with my dad, is that you were honest. And that you weren't afraid to speak your mind, and that, you know, he also, of course, would be able to speak his mind. I don't know about. I honestly don't know why he. I couldn't answer the Jay Diamond question. I would say he probably felt, and again, this is just what I know about my dad and what I remember about him. He admired people who worked hard, and so I'm going to say that it was because he saw something in Jay at an early point in Jay's time on the air, where he said, you know, this guy's a hard worker. I want to try to you know, do what I can to foster his advancement. I mean, wouldn't you say that, Chris? If we didn't, you know, in absence of what we know about somebody, that Dad would have said, you know, I admire. Because he did say to Chris and I know it in the past, I admire a guy or a woman who's a hard worker, somebody who, you know, who puts in full effort at something.
Yeah, true. Matter of fact, your question there a few minutes ago, I think Dad had a more falling out with producers than other radio personnel, you know, other talk show hosts. Excuse me. I think Dad was intrigued by Diamond's innovation, and he hustled. I mean, he was a really good producer. He got Dad out there. I remember talking about the Rio. How many times did they do the fundraiser for leukemia? That was all Jay Diamond back in the day. And to what my brother was saying is, I think he liked the fact that he was young, he was innovative, creative, and really helped my dad's scope of his radio show get into more markets.
And Curtis Sliwa, I'm going to say I also don't really recall too much there, other than this is just a guess for whatever that's worth. I think he he looked at Curtis and said, here's somebody who's standing for the right things, and therefore I'm going to promote that.
Well, I hate to say this, but Sliwa conned your father. Sliwa is a fraud. He's a degenerate liar and a media shyster, and he orchestrated one of his fake stunts where your father related a story. He was on the L train, sitting, in the corner, and these vermin came in the car and they surrounded him, and he covered his gold Rolex watch, and suddenly the doors between the cars opened, and Sliwa and the guardian angels came in, and these guys took off. Well, a few years later, when Sliwa was exposed as a liar, when he filed false police reports, which is a felony in New York City, where they took on these criminals. It was a lie. And someone called him and said, Bob, did you ever think that story about the L train was staged by him? So, he's a complete fraud, and he had, I think, 4, now 5 wives. He owes $500,000 to his third wife. Guy is a complete lowlife, and he created this persona. And when he last ran for mayor, which was a joke, he said to people, get this, you send my campaign $100 and we'll send you back $400. He never said how they were going to do it. And that shtick died in about 2.5 weeks. So he was very good at as a con artist, and that's all he is. Sorry to say.
Frank, as you're relating this story, it's resurrecting memories that I had of comments that my dad made, and I believe he recognized that. In fact, there was, I think, one time where, maybe more than once, where I can just imagine and remember him saying, that Curtis, he turned out to be nothing but a big phony.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
He figured it out after a while.
And I think, I think as far as the Jay Diamond thing goes, I think Bob took him under his arm because Bob was always busting Mario Cuomo's chops, and Jay did a good imitation of Mario Cuomo. So, they would do a shtick with Mario Cuomo being, the voice of Jay Diamond doing Mario Cuomo, and Bob, playing the straight guy. And it was really good. It was funny. So, they became close because Jay Diamond was a regular with the shtick that they would do on the air together, and it was really funny.
Yeah, and Bob said Jay would follow him around like a puppy dog, but eventually Jay went insane, and he got his own show at night on ABC. And then, I don't know if you were aware of it or were around then in New York area. He was on at night, and he was doing pretty good, but there was something wrong with him. And so Jay goes, he goes, wait till they, he wanted more money. And he's going, wait till, and with an angry voice, he's going, wait till they see my ratings. Really? And then he went on strike. He wouldn't come in. So, excuse me, he wouldn't come in. He went on strike for a while, and then they got new management came in, and they fired him, and they brought in Sean Hannity, who to me is just a generic host. I mean, that's why I guess the guy is syndicated, because to me there's nothing about him that's unique. You go back and look at the history of talk radio, the hosts were unique. This guy, I said, you put this guy anywhere and he fits right in, and sure enough, he did very well. But then they fired Diamond. He went on to WEVD, which stands for Eugene V. Debs. I call it We Have VD. and he was there for, I don't know, a few weeks, and he just went from station to station, and he's been vanished. I don't know what happened to him for about 10 years. So your father really helped him. He did really well, but his personality is distorted. I mean, the guy goes on strike, you know, and then they said, hey, you know what, we get somebody else, and that was it for him.
Right, and then he became a liberal because none of the conservatives on WABC came to his rescue.
He went to a Long Island station that tried to make it a talk station. I think they lasted around a month. And then he vanished from the metropolitan area. In fact, he went on Hannity's show on Fox. And Hannity was very nice. He had your father on and Jay Diamond. And,
I remember
you know,
that.
Hannity kept on saying, oh, we got to get Jay Diamond back on. They got to get... I mean, that's very kind of him. So when he had both of them on his radio show, and he kept saying, we got to... And then he starts going, Jay Diamond, to Hannity. I live in a rent-control apartment. How do you like that, Sean? I mean, he has like this nasty tone. The guy is trying to help him out. He's nasty to him. Then when Hannity got his TV show, he had Laura Ingraham, not Laura Ingraham, what's her name? Ann Coulter come on, and Jay is sitting in this big easy chair, and she ripped him apart. Oh, she made a fool out of him. I mean, the guy is sick, you know. His father was very kind to help him out, and fortunately, he's nuts.
Yeah. Well, we've got we've got some library of callers. A lot of them very funny, you know. We used to call all the talk show hosts. Not just Bob, and we put some funny stuff together in separate CDs.
Your father had the best callers. He had Uptown.
Yeah.
This guy would call up and imitate a black guy and go, Bob, baby, Bob. Hilarious. Mo the cab driver.
Yeah.
He had this guy, he used to call him the Duke of Earl. This is when Carter was president. No matter what the guy started out talking about, he'd go, now, when they're paying more for the price of Earl, I mean, they were hilarious, and you don't get that anymore.
No.
And to your point, you know, he'd talk about Ted Kennedy, and now the swimmer.
Right.
Remember that?
Yeah, the swimmer. And he used to call, he'd call David Dinkins the bathroom attendant.
Yeah, and they told them to cut it out. The men's room attendant.
Oh, the men's room attendant, yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, it's funny. It's just, you listen to talk radio nowadays, you know, and like my brother says, very sanitized. You know, you mentioned some people that do have a talk radio. You just don't have the innovation. You don't have the grasp. You don't have the... My dad really was well-spoken. You know, I mean, he'd say stuff like... you know, I'd have to look it up, you know, like a cabal, like what's a cabal, you know, and he forced people to look up words, you know, you're so parsimonious, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You don't have that nowadays.
Sanctimonious.
It's just so watered down. You don't have that depth. Whether you agree with him or not, you don't have the depth. It's very homogenized.
You know what the most infuriating thing is, that they don't have shows like your father had. Your father would let you talk about any subject. Well, a lot of times you want to call these shows today, they'll have like a subject for like the first 20 minutes or the first hour of the show, and you'll be on the phone waiting to get on to talk about it, and they want to switch the topic, you know, after you've been waiting for an hour on the air before they get, and then the screen caller comes on and says, "Oh, we're switching topics right now, but thanks for calling," and hang right up on you. You know, that's infuriating. So,
right. Or you know, my dad he went through the callers. I mean, that's what was so entertaining. I listen to these guys now. Would you take a call instead of bloviating? You know, he's one of a kind. I don't care how you slice it. You know, back then you took calls. Nowadays, it's all about the person. Whoever that host is.
Right. Yeah, it is. The caller was big. Let's play one of Bob's funny calls here.
Hello. Yeah, Bob, I I got a problem with the New York City. I'm gonna kill you, Bob. WOR. Hello.
All right, here's another one.
Hello?
Am I on? Hello?
Yes, hello?
Am I on?
Now you hear me laughing in the background. This is when I used to record them with a microphone on the radio.
On? Hello?
Yes, hello?
Am I on?
If you ask one more time, you'll be off.
I'm sorry. I sent a telegram to President Carter. Do you think I'll get a reply?
No.
Oh, my.
Thank you for the call.
That's classic. I don't have time for this.
Yeah. This we got tons of stuff for that. But yeah, that was when radio was fun. Hey, you can't get any more clear than that, you know? Do you think I'll get a reply? No, thanks for the call. That was good stuff. Bob was one of a kind, but, you know, and then there's some calls, you know, you'd be very nice to, and then other
You know, he said years back when this started, he said, everybody walk on eggs, and that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Everybody that does, one of the things that ruined it was when Disney bought ABC.
Oh, yeah.
When they bought it, I knew they were going to get rid of your father. I knew it because in Disneyland, everybody wears a smile, and they changed it. And as far as I'm concerned, when Rush Limbaugh came in, that killed it because it was syndicated, and it was... the caller was secondary, and by the way, he didn't have guests on. If you notice, if I don't know if you listened to him, but when you think back on it, he would play the tapes of politicians, but he would never have them on. See, it's one thing to play the tape and criticize them, but never take them on. And then it becomes much different than, like, your father used to have people come on and politicians or whatnot, and disagree with them. But Limbaugh never did that. And if a caller came on and the caller, whether you agree with the caller or not, the caller was putting up a good argument, he would use the out of, that's a seminar caller. Well, my belief is if you're right, I don't care who this guy is, you take him on and disprove him. And that's what really killed it, because to me, Limbaugh was on, when he first came to New York, he was on for an hour. And he could not handle the New York callers. Maybe it was different for him when he was in California and he had the type of control of the show. But when he had to take on the callers in New York, they really sliced him up, and then they dropped that hour, and then it was just his syndication. With your father, it didn't matter. I mean, he took on anybody. That's what made it unique and enjoyable. Yeah. After that, you listen to these shows, it's not what it should be. I only listen in my car, and if I'm not out that day, I really don't listen to it anymore.
Yeah, it was really like a town hall of the air that my dad had going. Chris, I think before you joined the conversation, I had said to John and Frank that my dad, believed very strongly that the caller was always the star of the show. Without the callers, there's no Bob Grant. And that is what his guiding principle was.
Yeah, and it showed. You know what? It manifested that way. You could tell. Whether he liked him, agreed with him, or despised him, the caller was premier.
Right. Yeah, he was the best, so it'll only be one Bob Grant, so he was good. He was the best.
You have the brain the size of a pea.
Get off my phone, you vile, filthy little worm.
See? That's what people loved about him.
Yeah.
Well, when and he had also a special affinity for the New York audience. I remember when he was when he was mentioning to me because he left the media scene in the Los Angeles area. I believe it was in early 1970, and he didn't have a place to go at that time. He had an agent, and his agent was working on several places that he was going to try to land. And, he had talked, and I think he was in pretty serious talks with a station in Atlanta. I believe there was a station in Chicago, I'm not quite sure. And there was one other one, and I don't, so there was 4 of them. And he said ultimately the decision was made to go to New York because his agent at the time told him that, just as in the song that we hear and know about all the time, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. Yeah. And that's ultimately what led him to New York. And he said, I want to go up against not go up against, but I want to engage with probably the most educated, savvy callers in the country, and that's going to happen in New York City.
Yeah. Well, I think you made the right decision. I think when he left WMCA, not sure of the timing of this, Frank, he went to Philadelphia for a while, right, Frank? I think he went to a station, WAVD or something like that for a while.
Yeah,
he was
I had
with,
a friend,
he was with
classmate in college.
WWDB in Philadelphia.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And he stayed down there for a while, and he actually, I think he was there for 2 or 3 years, maybe.
Oh, longer than I thought, so...
well, he was there. He was there just initially. He was there, and he was there only. And then I think part of the time that he stayed there overlapped with his return to New York. I believe he was in New York during the week, and then went down to Philadelphia on the weekends. That didn't last for too long because obviously it's a demanding type of schedule, but one that he could handle in a large part because he told us. Raising us, he said, boys, if you can find something you love to do and get paid for it, then you will have found the secret to working in this life. And that's what I've done. That's what kept him going practically until his health would no longer allow him to do it.
Yeah. We never really found out why your dad passed. Do you have a heart problem, or if you don't mind asking?
Well, he had. I don't know if you want to take this one or not, Chris. I guess both of us can speak to that a little bit. He had probably. I believe it was a stroke, and that pretty much left him at a point where he was just no longer able to function, and and he passed not long after that.
Yeah. Well, that's terrible for a man like that because you're so sharp mentally, and it must have been terrible for the whole family to see such a man who was so up on things and so vibrant to suddenly lose it, But
Chris and I both spent some time with him in his final months, and the way I would describe it is this way, and I do so. I mean, as you said, a lot of it is personal, but I know also that he has and probably still has some loyal fans and listeners who would appreciate maybe having a bit of a window. And that is that, Chris and I found it not necessarily, yes, painful, but also, it was striking to see somebody very active verbally and socially to be inactive that way.
Right.
But I can tell you that when my dad left this earth, I felt like I had lived a full life as his son and had no regrets, and just to this day, I look back on the time that we had together as a time that I'm very thankful for because I felt like my dad gave me, everything that he was able to do in his life. And, like everybody else, I mean, he has challenges in life, and maybe I look back at certain times as a son and say, well, he might have been able to do this better or that better, but I don't know what son or daughter can't maybe look at their parents and say, well, on this day they weren't maybe the best parent. But he gave Chris and myself and my sisters, I think, some nuggets in life to take with us that when I look back, I have a warmth and just a really good feeling about being his son and being able to share part of this life with him.
Yeah. Well, one of our listeners, a regular listener, Tom from Iowa, says, "Hey, remember the gag hour when he used to have the gag hour?" So, that was always a lot of fun too. So, and of course, he also wants to remind us a lot of Bob's shows now are on YouTube, and Tom says, "Tell Chris and Jeff about my YouTube channel." Yeah, I don't know how to give them the information. Let's see. Tom, I don't know. This is the address that he gives, Tom 52, New Jersey. I don't know how you would access that. I'm going to have to get that information from Tom, or if you want to send me another email, Tom, I know you're listening. How would they access your YouTube channel? You got to send me that information. And I'll give it to Brian, who's a friend of Chris and Jeff, and Brian can pass it on to you. So
okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, well, the one thing about your father was people listened for the insults because they weren't vicious. That's why people liked it, because it was hilarious. You listen to some of these other hosts, they were like, they didn't know how to do that. Barry Gray, he'd say he was, a lot of them were just nasty. I don't know if you remember John Sterling, who now has been doing the Yankees games for a few years. He was, they didn't have that sense of humor that, you could laugh at it. That's why people would call up and have him insult them, because it was, it was funny. It wasn't vicious, and that's what made him unique.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember one time my dad saying in response to, and I don't know if you have this on your calls, but I remember he said once to a caller, pal, you shouldn't be so thin-skinned.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people probably thought Bob was thin-skinned, so they probably thought it was funny him saying that, but actually Bob was a softie, so...
Well, it's funny. One that my brother and I remember is he told some guy, "Hey, tell you what, pal, let's just meet at a saloon. You can drink up, and then we'll go ahead and listen to you slobber all over yourself." And we just cut up laughing.
Yeah.
And that's how, my dad was so spontaneous, but yet he had the command of the English language. Sometimes he'd call up, say, son, you're bereft of this. Here, I got to go back to the dictionary,
Yeah.
But he did that to challenge us, right? He wanted us to be well-spoken. And I'm glad, because back then it showed that you just weren't, some dweeb that could barely put together a couple of sentences like the guy who occupies the White House,
Right.
And that was our father, and he did that not out of love, not being I'm more superior than you, and the British rule where you have to speak eloquently. No, my dad felt like you guys have to have self-respect, and here's how you get it. I'm so glad, because that's missing today.
Yeah,
He would tell Chris and I, boys, look, if you want to do anything in life, you're going to need to be able to express yourself well. You're going to need to have a command of the English language, which, by the way, boys, is the most beautiful language in the world. And, without that, if you're applying for a job or representing yourself in your work or, in some kind of social or civic function, you're going to go a lot farther if you demonstrate to people that you know what you're talking about, and you do that through being able to be facile with the English language.
Well, speaking of that, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have Barry Farber's daughter on, and we hope you're listening. So you'll be transmogrified, galvanized.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Did she walk in her dad's footsteps?
I don't think so. I remember she was doing a show with him for a little while, but we don't know if she's in radio. So we'll have some more radio history when we have Barry Farber's daughter on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they were the two hot tickets in talk radio. Barry and Bob. They were on the air here in New York at the same time. So it was a big not on the air at the same time, but they different. I think they were on different stations too. So.
Yeah, Barry Farber was originally on WOR.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and Dad liked Farber, by the way. I don't recall him saying anything negative about Barry Farber.
Yeah, well, he would have some great sayings like,
"Why use dynamite when insect powder will do?"
He was.
Oh, that's great.
A lot of true words are spoken through false teeth.
A lot of true. Yeah, you got.
You got too much sand in your gizzard. Clean it out and call me.
And another one of his favorite ones was.
I am tired of these analysts who act like a nudist crossing a barbed wire fence.
No.
No, he was. Yeah, they were two hot numbers here in New York. Barry and Bob. Oh,
that is, gentlemen, that is really an impressive array of sound bites that you're able to pull up. We salute you in having compiled all that. I mean, it shows, how you really are true fans, aficionados, not only fans of the host, but of really good talk radio.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we really appreciate that.
I am a butterfly's belch compared to you when it comes to powers of articulation.
Yeah, it was a fun day. It was fun to call talk radio then, but not these days. So, these days you get the bums rush. So.
No, it's just a whole different world nowadays. You don't get information. If anything, you leave and you're polarized, and and it just changed so much. I mean, anybody that had any class, they're gone. They just. I don't know. They've been dumbed down. It's unfortunate.
Yep. Well, our buddy,
and I think one of the things that's led to that is we, going back to something I had said earlier, was that the culture is different today. I mean, so much conversation takes place online, on the internet, and when you don't see someone face to face, you don't have that certain accountability for what you say. Part of the reason that my dad would call people out is because he wanted that accountability, and he also he himself would face calling out sometime, but it was all in the interest of having honest, transparent discourse with the goal of, how are we going to preserve the republic? How are we going to move the Union forward? Keep what our forefathers died for. I mean, that was always at the baseline of what my dad was thinking, was going back to the framers and the men and the women who basically and throughout history basically gave their blood to have a country that we at least want, I think, still to have, but certainly the one that we aspired to have for a long time.
Well, you got to get the right people in there, and the American people have to get smart too. So, and they can't let bureaucrats and the deep state run the country for us. Jeff and Chris, can you get a pencil ready there? Just take this down quickly.
Oh, sure.
Because I think I got a note from our buddy Tom in Iowa, who's a big radio fan, just like we are. And he says, just go to YouTube and type in, you ready, fellas?
Yeah.
Tom, Tom, T-O-N.
M.
M as in Mickey, TOM 52 NJ. Don't type out New Jersey. It's just Tom 52, the letters N and J. And he said, just as you see it, not New Jersey. Once you type in your YouTube search, you'll see Bob Grant and other classic New York City stuff. So
okay.
He puts
okay.
He puts a lot of
we'll check it out.
Yeah, he puts a lot of good stuff up there. He runs a radio, a YouTube channel there with a lot of stuff from old talk radio and everything. So, so you'll probably
just like we were talking about, the mental stamina of this country has diminished incredibly, and a lot of that's because of technology.
Mm-hmm.
They just people don't have the patience to have an AM radio in the background. They got to. Our minds are just, you read anything, and all of a sudden there's an ad, there's a pop-up, there's a this, there's a that. You lose focus. We don't have that stamina any longer. I don't know if we'll ever get it back because of technology.
Yeah.
Frank and John, I have a question for you because, I know how much you follow talk radio. Do you have any update, if you will, on the progress of legislation, which I'm not even sure if it's even out there, but the legislation that has drawn a lot of across the board, not just from conservatives, but from liberals as well, as a free speech matter, but the legislation that was intended to remove AM radios as standard features on new vehicles. Do you know where that is, where that's at or not at this point?
I think they withdrew that.
Okay.
Yeah, I know Republicans were trying to pass a bill to keep that. I think they've had it passed where they'll still have AM radio in automobiles up until, 2028 or something like that. So I think they're still going to have it in cars. So I don't know. If they passed it, I wish they would have made it permanent. Never mind this 2 or 3 years at a time nonsense. Just, you're going to pass it, make it permanent. People like AM radio. And I think that's a ploy because they don't like conservative talk radio that has a lot of influence on people. Conservative talk radio is very popular. So, the left is always up to something.
Of course.
This is another.
They don't want freedom. They don't want democracy.
No.
Right? They want control.
Oh, sure. That's why I call them neo-Bolsheviks. What they've done in the colleges is what the Sino-Bolsheviki did in China. It's a cultural revolution. Same thing. That's what they did, and that's what they're doing here. Yeah. And that's why they're so dangerous. There was a guy who was on MCA. This is when your father had left them. I don't know if you ever heard of this guy. He was from, I think it was from Detroit. I know he went to Detroit after Roy Fox. And he came in and, people would call. He'd say, oh, no, we don't hang up on people. We don't yell on people. He was supposed to be Mr. Nice Guy. And he'd say, oh, I'm like you. I get my coffee in the morning at the newsstand, and I get on the train. And this guy was so boring that towards the end, I guess, when they told him he was going to get canned, he starts yelling at the callers, And he went out to Detroit, and in the late 70s, they had what they called the teabag revolution, where these talk show hosts were getting together. I don't know, they were protesting something, and so somebody called your father and said, Bob, what about the teabag revolution? And he gave some answer, like, don't bother me with that.
bother me.
Well, the one technique that my dad used to do, I'm surprised we haven't mentioned it because we've been talking about all of these very entertaining techniques, and I know Chris remembers this one. When he would get a caller that he found to be rambling or somebody not making sense or one that he didn't like, he would do what he called the pour high technique, and he would take his, he had always a full carafe of coffee, and he would take that and he'd actually start pouring next to the microphone so that you would hear the sound of the liquid hitting the cup, going inside the cup.
Right. He did that quite often. So to more or less say without saying it, you're boring.
Yeah, exactly. And the callers usually had no inkling of what was going on. Yeah. I think I remember one time it said, "Are you still there, Bob? I can't hear you. It's getting staticky."
Right. Yeah.
And I remember him because I was down in the studio that day. He just kept going. He grabbed another cup and just kept going with it.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that used to be a ploy of his when he'd get annoyed with a caller or something like that, But
right, it was like liquid dribble,
Yeah.
He had his own unique style and brand of humor.
Yeah,
I know some people didn't find it funny, but he certainly was unique in that sense. Unique in that sense, and also unique in the way that he, a lot of times he was just fearless about the comments that he would make.
Oh, yeah. Well,
how dare you call with that inane comment?
But Bob used to really praise Frank a lot, so he really loved.
I remember
Frank's
when
calls.
he was on MCA at that time. I went up there because you would go to MCA and they would give you a free tour of the studios. And I saw Long John's studio after he left NBC. Originally, he was on WOR from 12, and then he was on NBC radio, which went defunct. And Long John, they had offered to give him an apartment in Rockefeller Center where he was doing the show. But for whatever reason, he left and he went to MCA, and they built him a studio. So I got to see his studio, and I got to see a father doing the show live. They'd say, all right, he's on the air, and, you stand outside, which was really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always, because they'd have that glass window, where you could look in, so it was, some hosts like doing the show in the dark, and some other, the room would be lit up. But when Frank used to call, Bob used to talk about how people would come into the studio to get closer to Bob.
That was Vintage Frank, ladies and gentlemen. Vintage Frank, who was not heard on this program for several weeks, and I must say, was missed. He is the only caller who attracts a crowd. There are people here on the 17th floor, Penn Plaza, not really the EIB building. There's no such thing as the EIB building. It's only a figment of somebody's imagination. But anyway, in this building, there are people who are paid by WABC. Notice I say they are paid by WABC. I don't say they work for WABC. They are on the payroll. And they sit around, they chat, they talk about what they had for lunch, where they're going for dinner, what they did the following week, the preceding weekend. And they sit around, they get paid. Hey, Manelli, there's a lot of people getting paid for doing nothing. Shouldn't say that. It might include John. Anyway, they come into the control room. They come into the studio because they want to be as close as possible to Frank.
Notice that dig he gave to Rush? He says there's no such thing.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as the EIB building. It's only a figment of someone's imagination.
Oh, boy.
Our dad had another name for him. He used to call him Curry.
Who?
Rush, he'd say, "Oh, you mean hurry?
Hurry?
Hurry. Rush, hurry."
Oh. Hurry.
You mean hurry?
Hurry. Yeah, it's amazing. But it was, he gave you plenty of time to speak when you called. This is what you get today, fellas, when we've played this before and people get a kick out of it. This is what you get today when you call talk radio. Whoops, hold it. No, 1 second.
Gotta run. Hurry up.
I'm out of time right now.
Time is short. Keep it short, Frank.
We have limited time.
You have to hurry up.
Quickly, we're running out of time.
All right, you've only got about 40 seconds.
Hey, John, you got about 40 seconds. We got 30 seconds.
All right, you have to hurry. 1 minute.
Very quickly, a minute.
Fast.
Linda on Long Island, very quickly.
Okay, fast.
We just have a minute left.
We've only got about a minute.
Mark in Pennsylvania, less than 30 seconds. Mark, go. Gotta take a quick break.
And I'm gonna let you go here, but I gotta let you go because I'm gonna get some other calls.
Thank you. Our time's up. John, 30 seconds, quick.
Hurry up, hurry up.
I just have to tell you, we've only got about a half a minute.
Hurry up, dear.
Karen, Dobbs Ferry, New York. Real quick, Karen.
Okay, I got 30 seconds, so get right to it.
Frank, you don't have all that much time. John, you really don't have nearly as much time as you wish you did.
Hurry up, I gotta take a break.
Let me answer your question in a short time.
Hurry up.
John, I don't have enough time.
All right, John, we don't have much time. You better hurry up.
And I don't have a lot of time. You got 5 seconds.
That last one is the best. You got 5 seconds.
Well,
I noticed
some
this
crack
John
editing,
guy,
gentlemen.
A lot of, John seems to be on all the shows calling in.
Yeah, I called a lot of shows. Frank called a lot of shows, too. We used to call them all.
And then when we got the show, I didn't call anymore, We're doing this we'll be doing it next year. Next year will be 26 years. So, that's when I really started to give it up. But one night, I got to tell you this,
26 years for this podcast?
Excuse me?
26 years for the podcast?
Yeah.
Well,
Well, this isn't a podcast, though.
No, this is a live show, and then, the show is put on a podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, because the podcast, they don't take phone calls or anything. This is a regular show. We take phone calls and all that. So.
One night I'm in bed, right? So I'm listening to ABC, and I hear John, and then I turn to WMCA, and it's a repeat. So they're playing a repeat of John's call on ABC. I turn to WMCA, and John is on live, so I'm hearing him at the same time on 2 different stations.
Yeah, they used to repeat shows that sometimes Frank and I would be on 3 times on the same station. So, that's how I got to be able to record a lot of our phone calls. Because, if you missed it the first time, you could always wait until they had the repeat, and you timed it, and you knew when you were coming on, so I'd get the phone calls and record them. So I used to record these phone calls even when I was at work, which was, not too cool, but I used to do it, so...
And one thing your father said, at the beginning of his show, and it's even more true now. Often imitated, but never duplicated, so that nobody will ever duplicate him.
Yeah, people tried.
Yeah.
No, he was definitely one of a kind.
Yeah. Well, fellas, we're
many times I've said, thought to myself, gee, but of course, we're only given the time that we are given. But I sometimes wonder what it would be like were he still on the stage today, and what that would look like in terms of contributing to the kind of discourse that's out there. Because really, he did want to entertain, but he also, as a motivator, wanted to see change for the better, or preservation of the ideals that a lot of people hold dear to them, the ideals that founded the country and kept it going.
Yeah, he'd be sick today with what's going on. So I'm sure he'd be very...
Yeah, there have been many times where I've thought to myself, when I hear about something, that happens, and I can just hear him. It's sick and getting sicker.
Right.
Yeah, that's he'd be more right today than ever. So.
Or he did a record where he said about the flag, and that's from the 70s. Hey, I'm the flag, don't you? How people. And this is in the 70s. How people, didn't have any respect for the flag anymore. Look at it today. I go by happen to pass by this Methodist church. They have the gay flag up. You're a church. Where's your American flag? Or they tell kids you can't wear a flag shirt. You can't have anything patriotic on a T-shirt. All right.
Look what they did at the White House. They have the trans flag on either side of the American flag. Oh, man. Oh, before you go, fellas, our buddy George, the objectivist, says, what about Bob appearing on Uber TV? He was on Uber TV for a while.
Oh, he was, yeah. I think in the early, I'm going to say in the early to mid 2000s. I think he did that for a couple of years. Honestly, I don't recall too much about it. I just know that it was something that he did for a while.
Oh.
Something that he wanted to try. He just wanted to try that media.
Yeah. Well, look, fellas, it's that time.
Get off the phone, you creepy, and I'm worthy of one more minute of my time.
That's what we'll say goodnight.
Get off the phone, you creep!
Well, we appreciate the opportunity to come on and remember our dad. As you know, it's been it'll be 10 years on Tuesday.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm sorry, it'll be 10 years on Sunday that he left this earth, and we just we just want to remember him and honor his memory. And I think what you've done. I think tonight, and then what you are continuing to do, I think honors that, and so thanks very much.
Well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, we'd like to have you on in the future again. So, listen, fella, could you do me a favor? Could you just stay on the air, because I wanted to get your email address. I think our buddy Tom in Iowa would like to have it. We'd like to have it as well, and maybe we could have you on in the future again. So
not a problem with me.
So either all right, either Chris or Jeff stay on the line. I'll get your email so I can contact you. So
remember, your influence counts.
Use it.
Use it.
All right, fellas. Hold on. Don't hang up yet. So I'm going to get your email, and I want to make note of it. All right. All right. Thanks a lot, fellas. We'll talk to you hopefully in the near future. And
all right, thanks again.
And Brian, if you're listening, thanks a lot for contacting Jeff and the gang and Chris, and we had a really good time tonight. It was really fun to reminisce a little. So, okay, hold on, fellas. Frank, just take over for a couple of minutes. I want to get their email. Okay.
Sure, because I remember when he'd say, "And your influence counts. Use it. Get Gaddafi." So some guy calls up and goes, "You're always saying get Gaddafi." Well, I'm Gaddafi and I'm sick of it. I mean, it was hilarious. That was the whole thing. It was entertaining. So it was very enjoyable. But there's no way you're ever going to see this.
I hope I lost Frank. I don't know if he hung up or he thought I lost him. There he is. Okay, I got you now, Frank.
Okay.
Okay, so I got Jeff's email address. Chris hung up. So if I want to contact him in the future, I'll just contact either Brian. But that was very interesting, a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's why I remember that when he say in the 70s, whatever, and get Gaddafi, and then this guy calls up and says, "You're always saying get Gaddafi." Well, I'm Gaddafi, and I'm, you don't have that anymore. That's why I don't listen. I only listen when I'm in the car. And if I'm not in the car that day, I don't listen. I took the batteries out of my radio. I don't. I have no desire whatsoever to listen to it. It's like Fox News. They keep repeating the same crap over and over again.
Yeah, a lot of it is repeated. Yeah.
And that broad there, Squeaky, what's her name, Jessica Tarloff?
Oh,
my God.
The mouse.
She get, what?
The mouse.
Hey, that's good, yeah. She gets on one day. She goes, I'm a birthing mother.
Oh, God.
I say, well, I thought you were a woman. You know, I mean, that's so foolish. You know, and I remember one called Bob, and she goes, well, I'm a mother. And he goes, yeah, I know what kind of mother you are.
Yeah. I think I remember that.
But that's the whole thing. See, his remarks were not mean. People try to imitate it. Dick Oliver, the drunk, Barry Gray. You know, they were nasty. See, they had a nasty response to it, and it wasn't funny.
Right.
You know, it wasn't enjoyable. You know, the Barry Gray, you go, you, sir, are a horse's sphincter muscle. Oh, that was ingenious.
Yeah, I know.
I got him really bad. He had a guest, and he goes to the guest. He starts to talk, and I go, now, wait a minute, you old goat. And now they cut that, but I was recording off my phone, and it comes out, and the guest is, like, cracking up. He was nasty, you know?
Right. And, you know, you brought up John Sterling. Because Bob was on WMCA at the same time that Sterling was doing his sports show.
Yeah.
And Sterling saw how popular Bob was. So he tried to change that format over into his sports format, and it didn't work.
No.
It didn't work. He just came off as a nasty skunk.
Oh, I got him good, boy. Oh, I called him up. And this is when they carried the Yankees. And they got, I think, beat 4 in a row by the Reds. And I called them up. And I go, John, well, twice when I called them up. I go, John, I hate to be an I told you so, but I told you so. I told you the Yankees would lose 4 in a row. He goes, so he says to me, and El Foldo, well, you ever been in a locker room? I go, no. He goes, well, I have. I go, what do you do, sniff jock straps? Then I call him again, and he goes, now, wait a minute, you pimply-faced, whiny little creep. I go, hold it, you fat slob. You're talking to a grown man. I'll come down to the studio. I'll beat the crap out of you, you fat slob. Starts screaming. He's screaming. Oh, he was a piece of crap, and he's a piece of crap as an announcer. He's a real shill. He's not in the league of a Mel Allen or Vin Scully or any of them.
I was on the phone with Chris. He called back, so I got his email as well.
Oh, good. Yeah, now Sterling, he's a nothing as an announcer. I forgot to tell them what he said about Sliwa to me when I said, Bob, well, you know, because, you know, the guy is on every show, you know, he's sick, you know, he's got to be the center of attention. And he says, I said something, you know, like, what are they paying him? He goes, he works real cheap, pal, real cheap.
Yeah, right. Oh, this is his favorite time of year because everybody else goes on vacation.
Right.
And he jumps in and he'll do every single show.
Oh, yeah, he'd do it 24 hours. But he owes, I had that email that he owed over $500,000 in child support to his wife, Mary.
Oh, God.
Yeah, see, so and he was complaining that he makes $110,000 when he was at MCA, when he was with the previous owners of ABC was making, I don't know, $500,000, and he can't afford to pay. You know, he's like a real lowlife. What a lowlife. Well, look, he scammed people out of contributing to his mayoral campaign. Send me 100, I'll send you back 4. What does he think? People are as stupid as him? They're going to believe that?
What a nut.
You know, I mean, really, you know, so that station is out for me. I can't listen to it. I can't listen to it mostly on any station anymore.
No, like if there's a hot topic or something, you know, and you want to find out what's going on, or if anybody's got the latest news or whatever, you know, then I'll tune in, you know. But And I tune in to get some information for the show.
Yeah.
And so I have to do it, even though I try to pick my favorite talk show hosts if I have any favorites.
Yeah, no, it's it's like I go to Newsmax for TV now. I watch Fox where they all laugh and they joke and I don't want to hear that crap.
Yeah, I find myself on Newsmax more